patterns to cut out. There's a convex curve and a concave curve. And those are going to be the first one that we're going to do. And these are just to learn the sample, so learn how to sew curves into curves. But this one is going to be a practical thing. So a princess seam is a design line that is on a lot of garments that are not knit, so it gives shape to the garment. And so this line is going to be a curved line if it's a princess line that goes into the armhole. And so this is going to be something that you're going to end up wanting to know how to do, because these are two curves that if you put right sides together, you see how they don't match anymore? Like, you're not going to sew them together like this. You're going to sew them together like this. So we have to figure out how to get this to fit into that other curve, right? But before we actually do that on a pattern piece, we're going to do some abstract samples so that you can see how to do it. Now, the first one I'm going to do is the most basic one, which is sewing a curve to a curve. So we're going to do the convex curve first. And this is this is the easy one. So this one is just take two of the same pieces. And we're just gonna sew them together. And I'm not gonna do stay stitching for this one. You know, it's up to you if you want to. You can do stay stitching on each one, but really it's pretty strong enough. It's okay. So we're gonna do 1/2 inch seam allowance because that's what's on our pattern piece. And we're gonna just back stitch here, and we're gonna do our best to stay even to that raw edge. And if it helps you, you can pin it. If it gets a little bunched up, go ahead and just adjust as you're going. Sewing curves can be difficult. You're gonna use your hands to sort of guide the piece of fabric through the machine slowly and carefully. So once you've finished sewing that curve, you're going to have to clip into this curve a little bit. So when you turn this, what happens is all of that extra is going to get, it's going to get kind of pushed in there, and it's going to be really bunchy and not smooth. So what happens is it kind of folds over itself like that. Can you see that? You don't want that to really happen. So what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and clip around. Anywhere there's a curve, you're going to clip. And you can clip right up to that seam, but don't go through, clearly, because then you'll have a hole in your garment or your sample. And you can clip about every 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch. Don't have to go too crazy, but you don't want them to be too spread apart. And what's going to happen is these pieces are then going to be able to slide over each other where they before would get it all bunched up. You also can, if you want to, trim this away a little bit to 1/4 of an inch. Oh, this is a bad scissor. And those clips will stay. You can trim it before and then clip it afterwards, up to you. That'll make it just a little bit smoother, and then turn it and it becomes nice and smooth, and then you would press this. And I'm not going to press it right this second because I want to continue with the demonstration a little bit more. So that's that one. That's the curve to itself. Now I'm going to do the same thing, curve to itself, but I'm going to do it on the concave curve. So this is the opposite of that one. And basically what I want to do is I'm going to sew these edges here. On my sample I did all 3 of those edges, or 4 of those edges, whatever. So maybe we can try that. It'll be good practice to do the corners. So does anybody remember how to sew a corner if you're going to turn it? Do you remember from your sample?
Leave the needle in.
And what do you do on the diagonal? You guys remember when you're turning it? That's right, if you're doing a top stitch, you do 1 diagonal stitch, right? So we're going to start, do back stitch there. As you get close to that corner, you're going to go down to a 1 stitch length. So it goes, and as you get close to the 1/2 inch, you're going to push your needle in, you're going to turn it just a little, and you're going to do 1 stitch, and then you're going to turn it the rest of the way. Here I'm going to stay at the number 1 stitch length because I'm not going very far. Again, I'm going to turn, do a diagonal stitch, and then I'm going to go back up to my 2.5. And again, going around these curves, make sure that you're, trying to keep it nice and even so your seam allowance is the same the whole way. When I get close to that, I'm going to go back down to 1. 1 diagonal stitch. Again, put my needle in, 1 diagonal stitch. And the reason I do that 1 diagonal stitch is because it's going to make room for my extra fabric on the inside. It seems like that would make it less pointy, but it actually works the opposite way. It actually creates a little room inside that turned area for that fabric to go. Now, before I turn this, I'm going to clip off these corners. And I'm going to clip 3 places. So I'm going to clip the corner, but then I'm also going to clip the extra seam allowance. So there's really not very much seam allowance in there. Same thing here. I'm going to kind of shave it up there. This curve here, I'm going to just clip in. And again, you can trim this to 1/4 inch if you want to. This one I'm going to just leave so you can see any difference. And again, same thing on these corners. I clip diagonally across, and then I do 2 more that kind of ease it out. Don't get too close to that corner because it'll pop out if you trim too close. It'll pop out onto your garment side, and it'll be a little hole. But if you leave about 1/8 inch, that's fine. So then I'm going to turn this. And if you gently use your scissors, you can push those corners out a little bit. Don't use it too forcefully, or you will pop out through the seam. And again, if you clipped that, I should have showed you what happens when you don't clip. It will lay nice and flat. So if you look at this in the light, I know some of you guys, I'll turn it around. You can see how those little clips they spread out. You see that? If I didn't do that, it would be puckering and pulling. Can you guys see that over here? You see that? So then I would press that, my corners are nice and crisp, and my curve is nice and smooth, and that's what I'm looking for. So those are the self ones. I now have 2 left. The next one I'm gonna do is just turning over these edges, so I'm gonna wanna turn it and just top stitch it. Same thing here. I've done one with a 1/4 inch top stitch and one with an 1/8 inch top stitch. I think we'll do a 1/4 inch. Now for this one, we're gonna do stay stitching. For the next 2 samples, we're gonna do stay stitching. So again, that stay stitching, if this is my 1/2 inch, our stay stitching is gonna be just inside of that. So a little bit more than a 1/4 inch from the raw edge is what we wanna do for stay stitching. And that can just be regular 2.5. And you don't have to back stitch with stay stitching. And remember, stay stitching goes on all kinds of curves that you want to make. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do both of these sort of at the same time because they're similar, and I'm going to have to go over to the ironing board, so I want to make one trip. Now that I have my stay stitching, I'm going to clip into just before the stay stitching, not through it, because that defeats the purpose of doing it. And then I'm going to go over to the ironing board, and I'm going to turn these in so that they are folding over just beyond that stay stitching. So I'm going to turn it like this and press it so that my line looks like that. And I'm going to do the same thing for this one, except it's going to be the other way around. And these are going to overlap a little bit, where those are going to spread out. And I'll show you when I come back from the iron. So this one's going to get folded over like this. Now this can be a little tricky to do, but try and have a little bit of patience with it.